As I said, I'm gonna give you your take-home assignment sometime on Monday, and that's gonna be. I'm gonna give you about 2 and a slight 2 weeks and a bit for you to do it. It's only gonna be a couple of slides, couple of slides of just casual writing. So it's not gonna be that much of a big deal, I doubt. You have to write in English, but the actual assignment will be pretty self-explanatory, but I will go over it, nevertheless, slightly, at the beginning of next lecture on Wednesday. Is that okay? So it's going to be based on, as I said, you doing slight amount of research on market structure in sort of markets that you encounter around you. Okay, so at this point, there's no point in me explaining any further. So let's wait till you actually see it, and then let's talk about it then. That's one thing. Yeah, that's about it. Right now, last lecture we started talking about perfect competition. And then we stopped more or less at this demand curve, right? Now, what was the most important assumption regarding this type of market? I would say one most important assumption. Each firm acts as a, finish the sentence and we'll be done, I guess. Price taker. What does that mean? Okay, so not firm's price, but however much the firm decides to produce, more or less, has no effect on the entire market's price as a whole. In other words, each individual firm or each individual supplier is too small to exert influence on the market. Okay? But as I said, that also has additional implicit assumption regarding the firm's good or service. What was this assumption? Homogeneous products. What's the meaning of it? There's no difference. 짜장면 is 짜장면. So you are indifferent between ordering 짜장면 from, I don't know, one of those cheapest places that do it for 2,500 won, or ordering 짜장면 at 도림 in Lotte Hotel or Paesan in Silla Hotel or whatever. To you, 짜장면 is a 짜장면. If everyone in the entire Korean market for 짜장면 perceives it that way, Paesan and Dorim will have gone way, way out of business a long time ago, right? Except that they are not. That's the reason. So the question is, do everyone perceive it to be the same good? Now, from a firm's perspective, differentiating your good, now it suddenly becomes like a marketing type of lecture, but differentiating your good is the key to holding on to market power. I might be charging a little more, but my 탕수육 is just like 이연복 셰프님의 recipe, right? Or just like the hottest recipe from, the I don't know, whatever. Yep. If that's the case, and if people believe that, and if people perceive your good to be materially different from other goods, it's people's perception that matters, Even if it's the same 짜장면, you're not doing anything extra to it. Just the fact that, just stating that you have spent time at Yeonbok chef's restaurant can suddenly make your good become different, to be perceived as different. That's the key to differentiation. That's the key to obtaining market power. Okay? But, we consider that extreme case where that type of differentiation is no longer possible. And that's the reason, by the way, why if you go to somewhere like eMart or Hanarumat or, whatever, every sort of even agricultural products are now, people go to great lengths to differentiate their own agricultural products. 오리가 먹고 자란 쌀. Organic products to an extent is this. 왜요? 오리가 그 논에서 해충들을 먹어줘서 자랐다는 그 얘기죠. 아니 그럼 뭐 쌀을 먹고 자란 오리 이런 거 아니겠습니까? 아니 맞다니까. That is right. 그런 의미에서. Okay, maybe not. Or I don't know, duck meat with, it fed on cardamom and ginseng. Chances are you would have put in about 2 grams worth of ginseng for a ton of, feed for ducks. And then, you can put it in as, now it's ginseng flavored duck or ginseng fed duck or something like that. 인삼을 먹고 자란 오리. 이거는 문제 없겠네. 인삼을 먹고 자란 오리. 예. 근데 인삼 뭐 1톤 들어있는 사료 속에 한 0.7g 들어있는 인삼을 먹고 자란 오리. 보통 이런 경우죠. 그죠? What are the sort of, are there examples that you can think of? Trying to differentiate between, yes, gas station. Why do you think there's a premium label gas? Why do you think there's a gasoline that is supposedly takes less damage to your engine and 200? But your one might be extra premium or something like that. So gas station is an area where it's quite difficult to do that, and that's the reason why that's the precise reason why they tend to be heavily engaging in price competition, because there's no other way to differentiate your good. You're actually quite right. But anything else you can think of? Let's take this lecture a little easy, at least for the first half. What are the sort of life examples that you can think of? Yes, well, Nike and those sort of shoes, I guess. I'm probably right in thinking that you guys were during your school time was that peak of 노페족, the North Face. So all those paddings, they're almost the same, but somehow different. Yeah. Suddenly the North Face was the thing to go for at one point. And then people moved out of it, and apparently 태구족, Canada Goose, moved on. And then those who are, thanks to our previous president, the Montclair also got noticed by people quite a lot. I actually happen to own one of those cheapest paddings you can get from eMart, the stuff, and they do the same job. So I don't see what's the value of extra differentiation by putting in that mark. But that's for me. Perhaps people in the schoolyard might think it differently, and then perhaps it's a differentiation from not being bullied or something like that. Who knows? Or I don't know. How can we differentiate something like mobile phone usage, mobile phone companies? How can you differentiate? Technology. Or anyone else? Suppose if you were the CEO of, I don't know, LGU Plus or wherever, how would you differentiate? It's the little things that count. Does the company have more free Wi-Fi zones in airports and train stations? Ole Wi-Fi or SKT T-Zone or wherever, something like that. Even those little things can. It's about, do people perceive your good to be different? It's almost a direct relation to how much market power you can generate. And we're seeing the one extreme case of it, where you can't ever do anything other than what the market price tells you to do almost. So the maximization problem facing a competitive firm is, notice this, each firm decides how much to produce, how many apples am I going to sell in the market, how many eggs am I going to sell in the market, how many cards am I going to sell in the market, minus the cost of producing that many output. But the key is this. Generally, for like monopolists or other firms, that P is going to depend on your choice of output. However many iPhones you produce is bound to affect the market price. How much you charge for mobile phone usage per month is going to have an effect on the overall market demand. Yes, but in this competitive, perfectly competitive environment, P is what? Given. The firm cannot influence. It's just like a constant. So what level of output will a firm choose? Now, that's the profit of the firm. And we want to maximize this profit. So from a calculus perspective, what should we do? To maximize, what do we do? 무언가를 극대화하기 위해서 미적분적으로는 어떻게 해야 되죠? Produce as much as possible? 진짜요? 그냥 without limit? What's the key optimizing condition then? What does the calculus tell you to do? 미분값이 0이 되도록, 그죠? 미안합니다. 미분값이 0이 되도록. So what that means is, what's your choice variable? You have, the only thing you can determine is your y. In other words, how much will you produce or how little will you produce? So you can vary y and only y. So differentiate with respect to y, get the first order condition, set it to 0, then here what you get left is p. And here, differentiating your cost function with respect to y, we said in Friday, was the definition of what? What we call it? For those of you who missed the lecture, you gotta catch up on this a little bit. But so cost function differentiated by output. How do we differentiate? So what's the definition of that? That is, how much does the cost change if we vary output, if we produce infinitely small extra amount of output? Now, what do we call this? 한계 비용. Every time you hear a word marginal, that means it's the end result of differentiation of some sort. Cost differentiated by output means how much does your cost extra increase by or decrease by, whatever, if you change output by a little extra amount. So P minus marginal cost has to be equal to 0, meaning P has to be equal to MC. So marginal revenue equals marginal cost is your general profit maximizing condition. Here, it's revenue minus cost. So differentiate and equating to 0, marginal revenue must be equal to marginal cost. The logic is this. You're deciding, you're not producing anything at the moment. You're deciding whether to produce the first good or not, first output. Gives you 10,000 won, but it only costs you about 300 won to make it. Should you produce? 자, 이거 만들면 10,000원에 팔 수 있는데 그거 하나 만드는데 드는 비용은 300원밖에 없습니다. 어떻게 하시겠습니까? You gotta produce, right? We move on and on and on and on like that, and suddenly we end up at a point where we sell one more good, we still get 10,000 won, but suddenly now it costs 11,000 won to make it. Should you produce that or not? No, it's too expensive. You get less money than what it costs you to produce, right? So that's where you cut back. Every time where marginal revenue, the amount you get from producing more, is greater than the cost of you producing that, you got to produce more and more. But when, on the other hand, if it costs you more to produce that new extra output, when you can only get like little amount of money by selling it, you cut back the production. So you end up at a point where you're just indifferent. You don't care about whether to produce one more or one less. That's where you stop. That's where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. And that's why that's the profit maximizing condition for this. Okay? Now, for perfectly competitive market, however, marginal revenue, in other words, how much money you get for selling one more good, 하나 더 만들었을 때 내가 돈을 얼마나 더 받냐는 that's not something you can influence. It's determined by the market itself. You got to accept what the price the market tells you to produce. You can't do anything else. So marginal revenue is always P, and that's the reason why we get this condition. So that's what I've written down here. Whenever P is greater than marginal cost, your profit will increase by producing more output. At each price level, for each price level, 자, 각각의 프라이스 레벨마다 선을 이렇게 왼쪽, 오른쪽으로 하나씩 그읍시다. Where will you produce? You can choose to produce here. You have amazing set of choices, right? But where will you end up? For each level of P, you will end up where? At the point of the marginal cost curve. Because that's the point where P is equal to MC. At this point, MC is here, P is here. They're the same. So at each point of P, you will produce here. In other words, now I'm going to explain this slightly more in a second. The upward sloping part of the marginal cost curve is going to be where that firm will choose to produce. In other words, marginal cost curve, 한계 비용 곡선이요. It is a collection of all optimizing per point for that firm for each level of price. 각각의 가격 수준마다 그거에 대응하는 최적 지점들이 있을 거예요. 그 최적 지점이 어디냐? 걔가 바로 거기가 MC와 같은 지점이어야 되니까. 그게 P가 MC가 같을 수 있는 지점 딱 여기. EP에서는 여기. EP에서는 여기. EP에서는 여기. 그렇게 된다는 거죠. 해서 that's the reason why that MC curve happens to be the firm's supply curve for perfectly competitive firm. Now, supply curve's definition is what for each given level of price, how many will the firm want to produce? You now have the answer. Marginal cost. 마지널 코스트를 보면 된다라고 딱 결론이 그렇게 나오는 겁니다. P가 MC와 똑같아야 되기 때문에. 각각의 수준의 P마다 그에 대응하는 최적 지점이 다 MC 커브로 잡힐 거기 때문에. Okay? But there are two important caveats, two important things. At this level of price, for example, okay, there are 2 points where price meets marginal cost. 선을요, 하나를 쭉 그어보세요. 여 위에서는 한 번 만나지만 밑에서는 2번 만나죠. At this bottom end of scale, there are points where if you assume that marginal cost is like this, here and here are potential profit maximizing points. Why is this the profit maximizing point and not this one? Why do you think so? You can't be sure of that. Whether that depends on whether marginal cost is above AC or not. But, 그죠? 그렇지만, but that's the right answer. At this point, P is equal to MC, but MC curve is slowing down. Therefore, if you suddenly happen to leave your current comfort zone and move out, produce by a little more, you will still get the same price for your good, but your marginal cost is lower, meaning you will definitely get more profit by producing more. That point actually happens to be the profit minimizing point, if you like. Okay? So, until now, I've given you, so the first part is regarding why only the upward sloping part of the marginal cost curve will be the optimal supply curve chosen by the firm. So, after having spent 12 weeks on the lecture, we finally have the answer now. As I said, I think it was in week 2, I think, or week 1, second lecture, that I asked Anders, what's your first impression of economics? And he answered, supply and demand, I think, right? Yep. Now, supply and demand are the most basic and most important concepts in economics, but I said the entire course, the very first half of the course, I took slightly longer than I had anticipated, is designed to show you that downward sloping demand and upward sloping supply can be now derived as a byproduct of each economic agent's optimal choice. Only at this point now can we say that supply curve is upward sloping as a result of profit maximizing. In other words, maximizing, optimizing under constraint type of firms, suppliers. If a firm wants to maximize its profit in a perfectly competitive type of environment, it will choose to supply according to its upward sloping part of the MC curve. And that is exactly the reason why supply curve is upward sloping. 공급 곡선이 위로 간다라고는 그렸습니다, 분명히. 그러고 이렇게 엑스트라 그래서 디맨드하고 만나고 하는 건 다 우리 고등학교 때 했죠. 했는데 공급 곡선이 왜 우상향하느냐, 우상향 우하향, 그죠? 우상향하느냐, 그 질문에 답하기 위해서 옵티마이제이션, 최적 선택이라는 개념을 도입을 한 거고, 이제 왜 얘가 어퍼 슬로핑 해야 되는지, 올라가야 되는지에 대한 답이 되는 겁니다. After 12 weeks. So we've come a long way. But now both demand and supply can be seen as a product of those optimizing choices. But there's one more important assumption here. This discussion assumes that, now remember we are talking about short run, okay? It assumes that it is profitable to produce something. In other words, producing nothing is not an option for you at the moment. Okay? But the firm can always produce zero output. If a firm shuts down its doors and says, I'm going on holiday, hell, do whatever you will. Okay? We are closed for the foreseeable future. 아쉽지만 깊은 상황에도 불구하고 당분간 문을 닫습니다. Okay. How much will a firm pay in terms of cost under this scenario? What will the firm pay? Will a firm pay anything? 정작 학생. Suppose if you shut down, suppose you open a company, okay? But it's not going well. So you decide to shut the shutters and go off to, I don't know, Jeju Island or somewhere, okay? How much does that still cost you? Will it cost you anything? What are the sorts of costs that you can think of? Can anyone help him out? Not just the opportunity cost, but you still have to pay the rent. 그죠? 임대료는 뭐 있든 없든 하겠죠. 또 뭐 있을까요? What are the stuff like phone line rental? 전화비는 내야겠죠. Stuff like all the furniture that you paid for in the office, they'll still be there. You paid for it. Okay? What do these have in common? What are they called? Fixed cost. You will still pay fixed cost. That's your baseline. If you shut down the firm and go off to Jeju Island on a holiday or something, that is how much it will cost you. Exactly up to fixed cost. So my question is, if a firm does any worse than that, will it produce or will it just shut the door? It will just shut the door. That's why it's called a shutdown condition. So, how do we determine this? When a firm produces nothing, it only pays fixed cost. Its profit is minus F. But by producing some amount of output, it gets PY minus cost. But I said cost is in two components, variable cost and fixed cost. Fixed cost you pay regardless of whether you produce the output or not. Cancel that out. What's your key decision point? If the revenue you get is not enough to cover for the variable cost, that's where you should stop. Suppose you open a 닭갈비 place. Then, suppose that you don't get that many customers, okay? But there are two situations. A, you're overall making some loss, but it's really small. Suppose that you're paying 1.5 million won every month on rent, but when you open the restaurant and cover the holes and sell those 닭갈비 and products, chicken and everything, you end up, you can reduce your loss to, I don't know, 500,000 won per month. Should you produce or should you shut the door? Anders. You should produce, right? You're making a loss, but your alternative of not producing anything at all is worse. But if by producing output you don't even cover for your variable cost, suppose that opening your store means you have to pay for the water bill, electricity bill, chickens, pepper paste, etc. The money you get from selling 닭갈비 doesn't even cover that. Then what should you do? You should shut the door. This is what's called a shutdown condition. So, PY, your revenue, must at least cover your total variable cost. Decide if you divide left and right both by Y, you get price has to be at least bigger than what? Average variable cost. And that is the reason why any point below here will not be chosen by the firm. Now, earlier I said the entire upward sloping part of the marginal curve will be the firm's optimizing point. That is not true. The correct answer, on the other hand, is P has to be at least greater than AVC. So if it's even below the minimum part of AVC, then what? You don't even cover for the variable cost. So in that case, you're going to shut the doors and go off to have a glass of soju with your friend and, you know, drown the sorrows. That's the shutdown condition. So only the marginal cost curve that is above the minimum of AVC, average variable cost, that's the supply curve in the short run. So I hope this is reasonably clear. Yeah. Now, given the market price, we can now compute the profit of the firm. Okay? Now remember that the firm profit is given by PY, revenue, minus C, cost. Revenue minus profit, revenue minus cost equals profit. And given that Y minus AC equals cost, average cost times the output is the total cost. So what can you do? The firm profit is given by this much. At this P star, first of all, draw a line to the right until it hits the MC. This line, the length of this line gives you how much the firm produces, Y. But P minus average cost is how much profit you generate for each output, per output. So Y times profit per output means total profit. So the simple logic is you multiply Y by the difference between price and average cost, and that gives you your profit. Okay? Now, we also talked about producer surplus. Producer surplus. The producer surplus was what the producer was willing to produce for each level of output, and the difference between that and the producer's price actually received, what he actually got. In other words, this triangular area between price, y-axis, and the supply curve represented that producer surplus. But I will not prove this, but I will also just tell you that there are 3 equivalent ways of measuring this producer surplus. Easiest one is if you multiply if you multiply P minus AVC, not AC. AC is the profit. AVC is the average variable cost, which always will be lying below AC. And if you multiply this by Y, you get the same amount as that. It just so happens. Okay? And the area between the price and the marginal cost curve so area between the price and marginal cost curve here will also have equivalent area. So in other words, this area is the same as this area. Okay? Third, area to the left of the supply curve. That is this. Supply curve will stop here because price below ABC will not be produced. So MC minus air going all the way down here and then go to there, area to the left of it. So it's going to be a trapezium. 사다리꼴 형태겠죠, 그러면. Then that also gives you the producer surplus. So that means that this area is also equal to that area. Those three measures, if you think about it carefully, but as I said, you don't need to prove this, have equivalent meaning, and therefore give exactly the equal amount of producer surplus, regardless of whichever way you measure it. Now, we know that the area to the left of the supply curve was the producer surplus's original definition. But it so happens that you can measure it the other way around. And the easiest way to do it is P minus AVC. Take that difference, then times it by Y, and you'll be done. So, what can we say about the relationship between the firm's profit and producer surplus? So, profit was this. P minus AC at this point. P equals MC tells you how much you will produce. Go down to AC and you get the average cost at that particular point. So P minus AC is the difference here. Times Y, you get the profit. But producer surplus, as I said, is equal to P minus AVC multiplied by Y. So, what's the relationship between the two? 두 사각형 중에 뭐가 커 보이냐 얘기죠, 결국에는. Producer surplus is bigger than the profit, assuming what? Which only can happen when above ABC. Which can only happen when exactly. As long as there is fixed cost, profit is smaller than the producer surplus, or producer surplus is larger than the profit. Okay? That makes sense. Okay? Profit is something that takes into account of everything, both variable and fixed cost, right? But the producer's willingness to produce, 내가 더 할지 말지는, that will only depend on the output variable cost, the only cost that varies with the output. And that's the reason why surplus is greater than profit. Okay? Now, what about long run? In the long run, the firm can optimally adjust its plant size. In other words, how much it will produce, how many offices it will rent, how many plants it will establish and construct, how many, I don't know, new headquarters it will have, etc. So, the optimizing condition becomes that MC in the long run MC curve. Now, I didn't tell you exactly about this concept between short run MC and long run MC, but just so you know that the long run marginal cost take into account of the fact that you can increase output and adjust the optimal plant size at the same time. So in other words, you have greater flexibility. If your bakery goes well, you will open a new store. If your bakery goes badly, you rent a smaller office. You can decide between the plant size as well. Generally, okay, I'm going to skip this part. Generally, long-run marginal cost tends to be more elastic than short-run marginal cost curve. So if the short-run marginal cost curve looks like this, long-run marginal curve tends to be more shallower, less steep, okay? Because, as I said, the firm has greater flexibility. The short-run supply is like this, but long-run supply is much greater. One of the best examples is this. Over the past year, honey butter chip. It's a sort of honey and butter flavored, I don't know, potato chips or British English-wise crisps that took Korea by storm and complete sensation a couple of years ago. Now, I can think of even episodes where a boyfriend would give a girlfriend honey butter chip for White Day because it was literally that difficult to obtain. The factory didn't expect that it would have so much demand for that. So in the short run, it only had one factory in Wonju or Hyengsang or somewhere making honey butter chip and nothing else. Nowhere else. So at that point, like knowing someone at Nongshim, the company that makes it, became like something to boast about. Yeah. Oh, I managed to get a box of honey butter. And then another thing was, if you happen to know the part-time worker at the nearest 24-hour convenience store to you, 편의점 알바분하고 친하시다면요. For example, in my case, I happen to know my apartment areas. 알바가이라고는 하지 맙시다. Part-time worker really reasonably well. So he actually tipped me off and said, actually, we're going to have it come in at 8 a.m. tomorrow. So if you're here at 8 a.m., you will get the honey butter chip. But I can only sell you about 2 or 3 or no more. Okay? But do we still craze over honey butter chip or not? No. I mean, I know why it was so popular to begin with. But in any case, the main reason why people are less like, oh, I gotta get it, is because the factory increased its production a lot. It built a second factory or second additional production facility next to it so that a greater amount of honey butter chip could be supplied to the market. And also people's demand gradually fell as well. And then other companies also began to make stuff like Emart now has a PB brand called Honey Tong Tong and stuff like that. So that's I think how I would motivate short-run supply and long-run supply. I think we had about 1 or 2 of these obscenely supply-induced craze over the past couple of years. honey butter chip was the one of them. When Sunhari first came out, that was another point. I think when you had to find a restaurant that has it, and then you would drink Sunhari and nothing else, and then the guy would come over and says, no, we don't have it anymore. You gotta go for the normal 참이슬. And then it's a Sunhari 처음에 무슨 플레이버죠? 레몬이었나요? 유자였나요? 유자였죠, 그죠? So yuzu, the citrus flavored soju. Don't know why. I mean, nowadays it's like the craze is over, but you know, at that point, because the supply was so limited, everything reacted even crazily. Now, one particular case of interest happens when long-run technology of the firm exhibits constant returns to scale. I said that if there is constant returns to scale, I said the firm's long-run average cost will be flat. I said otherwise it will be like, you know, limitless amount of profit to be had. So it's like this in that case. Short-run AC looks like this, but long-run, okay, that's supposed to be a straight line. So long-run only takes into account at this point so that each SRAC may be U-shaped, but long-run, it's always constant. That's the beauty of constant returns to scale. But remember what we said about averages and marginals, okay? If the average cost is always a flat line in the long run, what does that imply about our marginal cost? Also flat, because if the marginal cost is either below or above it at any point, it's going to bring average cost up or down. It's going to no longer be flat. It's going to be either downward sloping or upward sloping. There's going to be a slope. I said that, you know, let's go back to the last lecture, marginal cost and average cost. Marginals and averages always must have a relationship. Like in baseball, where you have if you have a really good day, hitting home runs every time, your batting average goes up. Having a good marginal day brings your average up. If you get struck out every time, you're having a bad marginal day, and that brings down your average. So average can only be flat if marginal is neither above it or below it at any point. In other words, it's also flat. It must hold. For constant returns to scale in the long run, this important condition must always be satisfied. Error AC equals error MC. So at this point, you'll be basically, so your firm's long-run supply is very interesting. It's this. You will be willing to supply anything at one particular price. If you're above it, you're doing really well. That's great. You're earning profit. Great. If you're below it, you'll not be willing to supply anything. In the long run, you're only going to have one particular point where you don't mind producing 2, 5, 10, 30, 100, 1,000, 9,000 units of output. Doesn't matter. That's the beauty of constant returns to scale. Now, remember this result, because when we move on from a particular firm to its overall industry, the results become different. And we are going to see this result at work, and it's going to be really useful to have it. Okay? So how do we define industry supply? In other words, we know the firm supply. We know how each and every firm will supply, right? So how can we find out about the overall supply within the entire market? What do we have to do? Okay, first of all, because firm supply differs between short run and long run, we also have to distinguish industry supply also in the short run and in the long run as well. So let's consider the simple case of short run first. In the short run, okay, suppose, okay, let's go for this. Can anyone tell me, can anyone summarize what we have found out about each individual firm's supply in the short run in one sentence? Can you summarize it in like one simple sentence? Where will each individual firm produce, or what's its supply going to be in the short run? Quite a few people here already asked this part of the classroom, so I'm going to go to 이문호 학생. Can you summarize what we have learned in the first part of the lecture in one sentence? What will the firm's supply curve look like above the minimum of the ABC? Thank you. 잘하셨습니다. So each individual firm supply, one sentence summary. Upward sloping part of MC curve above the minimum of ABC curve. ABC의 최저점 위에 존재하는 한계 비용 곡선이 곧 해당 회사의 단기 공급 곡선이 됩니다. 그 얘기 하자고 40분을 쓴 거예요. So that one sentence that I tried to get across took me about 35 minutes to explain, basically. Yep. So if each firm behaves like that, how can you find out about the entire industry? Well, in the short run, you just sum up what each firm will produce at each price, and you have it. That's it. Nothing more. In other words, this is equivalent to adding up all individual supplies horizontally. What I mean by that is, suppose at 501, Anders will produce 7, Melissa will produce 5, Raphael will produce 9. So 5% plus 9 is 21. So, and then, I don't know, who shall I go to? Jongjin Haksen will produce 3, Yoon Jae-sun will produce nothing, etc., etc. If you add up the supply of everyone in the class, what do I get? The industry supply at 501. If you do that for each price level, what do you get? You get the industry supply. So it's like this. If you have supply curve here, then if you horizontally add up, so this the distance between here and here is equal to distance between here and here, then you get the industry supply. 옆으로 더해주면 됩니다. supply들 옆으로. 쭉쭉쭉쭉. So that will be that for the short run. But here's the important part, and here's something I don't think I can finish today. In the short run, some firms will be making profits, others will be making losses, others might be breaking even. I don't know. Different firms have different cost functions. different firms have different characteristics. So if we add up everything and we get the market's entire demand and the market's entire industry supply, this P star is your equilibrium price in the short run. Okay? That's the point where each individual firm will have to take the prices given. 그죠? 시장이 정해주는 거고 가격은 그 가격에 대해서 나 회사 하나가 나같이 미약한 겨자씨보다 작은 티끌만도 못한 존재가 할 수 있는 건 없다. 갑자기 되게 성경적이 돼버렸네. So, in that case, at this point, some firm will be producing at P equals MC and making profit. P minus AC times Y is that firm's profit. Other firms might be making losses. At the point where you're maximizing your profit, P equals MC, your average cost is above your price. You're making losses. Yet another firm might be exactly breaking even and doing nothing more. You may be making profit, you may be making a loss, you may be making just enough to stay in the industry, nothing else. In the short run, there is nothing you can do about it. But in the long run, things become different. 단기와 장기의 항상 차이가 존재한다고 했습니다. 그 차이가 무엇이냐? What's the difference? The first is that each firm can adjust their plant size. So the factors of production that was fixed in the short run, office space, plant space, etc., is now expanded. You can adjust your plant size, your office size, etc. But second thing is more important, which is what 이문호 학생 just was talking about just earlier, right? Loss-making firms will go to other industry. New firms may be driven in by the profits. Or if you're breaking even, you might be doing nothing else. So the key question then becomes, how will the others sitting on the sideline, think about, okay, I can give you a football analogy. Suppose that you're in a football club and your manager, who's a senior member of your university, is the manager, and he left you out of the starting 11. Yep, 60 minutes go. It's about subs time. Then, there are about 3 or 4 subs competing for the same position. Okay, so everyone will be, waiting on the sidelines and then just like kicking balls and just, warming up, thinking, pick me, basically. Yeah. What the people waiting on the sidelines in the industry equivalent is the potential entrant. Those who can come into the ground instead of the firm. Well, I mean, in football you always have to have 11 players, but not in football. Actually, not in army. I guess 30 to 30 football. We've had before and stuff like that, right? So a new player comes into the pitch. A new player comes into the ground. New entry. A player who's either injured or loss-making or I hate this, leaves. how does that change this industry's supply on the whole? How does that affect it? What can we say about it? That I will leave for next Wednesday's lecture. And then we can finish the lecture here.